You won't believe what I just found out. David's voice cracked with a mixture of shock, anger, and urgency. It was that sort of statement that makes one instantly sit up and listen. Without any small talk, without a polite lead-in. This was pure, raw revelation. David had spent weeks, maybe even months, silently gathering the pieces of a puzzle that had started out as whispers among family and friends. Now, though, the picture was undeniable, explosive, and utterly shocking. The person at the center of it all? Robyn, Kody's third wife. The allegation? A secret affair with none other than David Woolley's cousin. To fans of sister wives, this had the makings of the type of revelation that could shake the very foundation of the family unit as they knew it. To Kody, it was personal, a deep stab in the heart of his well-oiled machine of a life. David's hands shook as he reached for his phone and dialed Kody's number. Every ring felt heavier than the last, each one echoing the tension building inside him. He knew this call could change everything. Not just how Kody and Robyn would feel about each other, but how the family dynamic would go forward. This wasn't some gossip or speculation, but evidence collected, facts checked, and dots connected to a truth that Kody would probably never want to hear. When Kody finally answered, his calm greeting, "Hello?" suddenly felt almost naive. He had no idea what was coming. Then David's voice, sharp and unflinching, cut through the silence. "Kody, I need you to hear this," David began, his voice tense but level. "It's about Robyn, and it's serious. She's been seeing someone. Not just anyone. David Woolley's cousin." There was a moment's silence, and Kody's mind began to race. He had always trusted Robyn implicitly, but here was the seed of doubt beginning to creep in. Could it really be true? Could someone so close to him, someone he had shared his life with, betray him in such a profound way? David continued to painstakingly lay out the details. Messages in the dead of night, suspicious meetings, private calls, Robyn always managed to circumvent as harmless or job-related. Each piece added weight to his revelation. The more Kody listened, the more the shock settled into a cold, sinking sensation. This wasn't some kind of misunderstanding, some rumor. This was real, and right beneath his nose. Kody's hands tightened upon the phone. His voice, when finally coming, was low and strained. "David, are you sure about this?" "I triple-checked everything," David said definitely. "I've seen the messages, the timestamps, and even spoke to someone who witnessed them together. Kody, I wouldn't tell you this if I didn't have to, but the truth is out now, whether we like it or not." The words hit Kody like a physical blow. Betrayal isn't just emotional. It is a seismic force that rattles every corner of your life. And in a family as public and as interconnected as the sister wives, the ripples of such a revelation go far beyond the walls of their home. David's voice softened a bit, feeling the heaviness of what he was releasing into the air. "I know this is hard to swallow, but you need to hear everything before it gets out of control. You should have the truth, Kody, because nobody else will tell you like this." Kody leaned back, trying to process the information. The shock of it made his heart pound, scattering his thoughts as queries tumbled out one after the other. How long has this been going on? How could he have missed the signs? And most importantly, why? Why Robyn? Why now? The call continued, as David walked Kody through the timeline of events. How subtle things had hinted at something deeper. Schedule changes on Robyn's part, unexplained trips, and defensiveness when the topic of David Woolley's cousin came up. Initially, Kody had considered them as minor or insignificant. But with David's insights, all the small pieces now fitted together as an accusing picture of deception. Each revelation twisted Kody's stomach in a different direction. Anger, confusion, heartbreak, he felt it all. That someone he loved and trusted could keep such a monumental secret was, for the most part, unthinkable. His brain flashed back to each and every moment he had shared with Robyn. Family dinners, vacations, intimate conversations. Could all of it have been a lie? The very thought was unbearable. David continued, highlighting specific interactions that could not be ignored. Late-night meetups, suspicious social media exchanges, and subtle but telling body language that David had noticed during family gatherings. He had pieced everything together, like a detective solving a high-stakes case. Now Kody was left to confront the reality of it all. "You need to think about your next steps," David said softly. Though his frustration was apparent, this is not just about anger or betrayal. This is about protection to yourself and your family, and determining what is next. You have to be very careful, Kody. These things can escalate in a split second if handled wrong. Kody's mind was racing. How does one confront such a huge betrayal in their spouse? How do you sift through the minefield of emotions, family allegiances, and publicity that accompanies such news? And maybe most frightening of all, how do you shield your children from the repercussions? This was a draining call for David, but one he knew needed to be made. He made himself very vulnerable by disclosing this information, since he realized the potential outcome could be the damage of relationships and strained interactions among family. Yet he similarly knew that not saying anything would be much worse. Secrets, especially those of love, trust, and betrayal, have a way of surfacing in ways so much more destructive if left hidden. Kody finally spoke again, his voice low but firm. "Thank you for telling me, David. I need time to process this." David nodded. "Take all the time you need. Just remember, the truth is out there now, and you can't ignore it. Be careful who you trust from now on." As he hung up, Kody sat in silence, phone still in hand. The room felt colder, heavier, as the weight of the revelation settled over him. He realized that life, as he knew it, had changed in an instant. Nothing would ever be as it had been. Every interaction with Robyn, every memory shared, was tainted now by doubt and suspicion. Yet, beneath the shock and heartbreak, a small part of him felt a strange clarity. The truth, though brutal, had been let out. Secrets have a way of growing and festering. But now, Kody at least knew what he had to do to face reality. The next steps would be hard, emotional, and public, but they had to be taken. This simple act of a call had monumental consequences, setting the stage for arguably the most dramatic chapter in the history of sister wives yet. It is a tale intertwined with betrayal, trust, family, and love, one that is just beginning now. These little things that had seemed insignificant now screamed betrayal as Kody started to realize that for months he had been missing things. Robyn, whom he had always unconditionally trusted, had been concealing parts of her life from him, and the truth was slowly coming to light. David hadn't merely called to accuse them. His words were laced with a detailed account of behavior, messages, and secret meetings. And with each new revelation, Kody felt the weight of the betrayal pressing harder on his chest. It wasn't easy to piece together the pattern, since Robyn had always been careful, making sure her interactions with David Woolley's cousin seemed casual and innocent. Lunches labeled as friends catching up, text messages disguised with mundane content, and social media activity that appeared ordinary upon first glance. But David had noticed subtle inconsistencies, sudden disappearances during family events, late-night texts that disappeared too quickly to be normal, and nervousness whenever certain topics were brought up. Kody replayed moments in his head. That day, Robyn left the family gathering earlier than usual. The weekend she claimed to be running errands, but returned exhausted, and the countless times when she was spaced out or preoccupied. At that time, he considered it stress, or possibly a challenge with a polygamous home. But now it all fell into place, a terrifying pattern. with David's revelations. David had gone a step further. He had screenshots of messages, eyewitness accounts from friends and acquaintances, and a detailed timeline showing when Robyn had been meeting up with David Woolley's cousin. Each piece was meticulous, and Kody realized that ignoring it was no longer an option. The evidence wasn't circumstantial. It was overwhelming. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was calculated. Robyn had taken care to cover her tracks, making the affair almost invisible to those who would have been looking for an affair. But David was observant and dogged, and through the facade, he perceived this. It was quiet, strategic, and hidden. The most painful things for Kody to know. He had trusted Robyn implicitly, and now he realized that this base of trust had been compromised in ways he could not have imagined. The more he thought about it, the angrier Kody got. Someone so close, a person of shared life, family, and dreams, had orchestrated something in such a secretive manner. Was it a moment of weakness? Or was this some calculated deception, from months in length, that was planned in subtlety and hidden from view? These questions swirled in his brain, each more painful than the last. In the midst of anger and frustration, there was this desperate, crying need for clarity. Kody knew full well it would be a confrontation, but he also knew that timing meant everything. Impulsive reactions could only worsen matters. Tension could escalate. Trust would further deteriorate, and even the children may suffer. He needed to be patient and observant, much like David in uncovering this truth. David's role in all this became even more crucial. By exposing Robyn's actions, he had forced the family into a position where denial was no longer an option. Secrets, especially of the relational and trust-building type, have a way of growing and festering if left unchecked. David's persistence had prevented that, shining a light on the hidden affair before it could grow further out of control. Kody also realized that it was not just about him and Robyn. The whole family was at stake. Sister wives are not just two people in a relationship, but a complex network of marriages, loyalty, and shared responsibilities. In fact, Robyn's actions caused ripple effects that will explode to each family member and change trust and relationships across the board. The more Kody reflected on it, the clearer the patterns became. The interactions with David Woolley's cousin weren't random for Robyn. They were tactfully contrived to prevent suspicion in such a subtle manner that only an extremely keen observer would catch them. Kody realized that these minor inconsistencies he had previously felt but dismissed were actually signs of a continuous, surreptitious affair. The betrayal wasn't about secrecy. It was about intimacy and about trust. Robyn had shared moments with someone outside the marriage that were supposed to be reserved for him. Each late-night conversation, each secret meeting, each subtle smile exchanged with David Woolley's cousin was a violation of the unspoken bond they shared. Kody's heart ached as he recalled memories, now tainted by doubt. Moments that once brought joy were now marred by suspicion. Add to that the pressure of social media and community gossip. Secrets remain secret in the very public sister wives family for only so long. There's someone always watching, always analyzing, always speculating. The knowledge that this could get out into the open soon added urgency to Kody's need for clarity. He had to understand the truth fully before he could confront not just Robyn, but the entire family and the world that watches. David had made it clear, this wasn't just about exposure. This was about protection. By revealing the affair, he had given Kody a chance to control the narrative, to make informed decisions and protect the family from further harm. It was a hard gift, one wrapped in the pain of betrayal, but so necessary for the long-term survival of the family structure. Kody also realized that confronting Robyn without solid evidence might not work in his favor. In cases of betrayal, Emotions run high, and accusations alone aren't enough. David's meticulous collection of proof gave Kody the clarity he needed. Screenshots, witness statements, and observed behaviors aren't convenient. They are a requirement for facing the truth regarding Robyn's betrayal. The emotional weight was nearly unbearable. Kody felt sad, angry, disbelieving, and heartbroken. He loved Robyn, but love alone couldn't take away the sting of deception. Every memory that they shared was now clouded with doubt. Every interaction held the potential of lies he had never suspected. The idea that trust could be broken so completely left him vulnerable and exposed. In all this turmoil, Kody also started thinking of the children. Secrets and affairs somehow find their way into the lives of everyone involved, he knew, and that one needed to safeguard the children from heartbreak and confusion. He had to weather the storm with care, weighing emotional confrontation against practical decisions to secure his family. The more these pieces of Robyn's secret life fell into place, the stronger Kody's resolution became. He would confront her, but he would do it strategically. He would demand answers and clarity as a means of ensuring no more deception could take place. This had been an affair that was hidden and subtle. Now it was exposed, and Kody knew ignoring it would only allow the betrayal to continue. David's role in revealing the truth had set the stage for a confrontation that was unavoidable. Kody knew this revelation was only the tip of an arduous journey that would be made through heartbreak, trust, and family loyalty. Every step beyond this would be crucial, not only between him and Robyn, but for the entire family. As Kody reflected, he realized something profound. A betrayal is not an act, but the secrecy, deception, and deliberate breaking of trust. Now, with the truth at hand, he prepared to confront Robyn over her betrayal and discuss what was next for the family. The revelation of Robyn's clandestine relationship had exploded illusions, rent the household asunder, and stirred up a maelstrom of emotion. But in the middle of all that chaos, there was just a thread of clarity. Secrets can't withstand the light of day, and David's persistence had thrust the truth into the spotlight. Kody now possessed the power of choice in how he would handle the fallout, protect those dear to him, and carve through the most difficult phase of his life so far. It was a done deal. The clandestine affair was no longer a secret, and the next moves, carefully calculated and emotionally charged, would determine whether the family could survive the storm or be torn apart forever. By the time Kody sat down with Robyn, an emotional tempest had long since begun to build in their home. In the silence, the weight of David's revelations hung heavy, unseen but palpable, infecting every nook and cranny. For hours on end, Kody replayed the evidence in his mind, weighing every point, every minute inconsistency, and all the secrets David had uncovered. The affair wasn't solely a breach of trust. It was a fracture in the family itself, and Kody knew that confronting Robyn would be the toughest conversation of his life. Robyn greeted Kody that day with her usual bright smile, oblivious to the fact that he now knew her secret. But Kody wore another expression that day, one taut, unreadable, a mask over the hurricane raging beneath the surface. He had rehearsed what to say, how to approach her, but as he stepped closer, the words seemed urgent and impossible all at once. Fear of losing her completely clashed with a need to demand the truth. "We need to talk," Kody said in a low voice, yet with firmness. His voice had no accusation in it as of yet, but the tension in the room bespoke this to be serious. Robyn paused, sensing the gravity behind his words. The warmth of the smile faltered, replaced by a hint of apprehension. "What is it, Kody?" she asked more cautiously, tilting her head, and there was a subtle defensiveness in her posture. an instinctive barrier she had erected without even realizing it. Kody took a deep breath, knowing he needed to be calm, precise, and unwavering. "I know about your meetings with David Woolley's cousin," he stated, letting the words hang in the air like a blade. The silence in the room was thick. Robyn's eyes widened slightly before narrowing, as if searching for a way to answer him. Kody saw the flicker of hesitation, the short, almost imperceptible stop before the words would form. He had hoped for honesty, but he was ready for denials, excuses, and maybe even anger. Robyn's voice was modulated, almost rehearsed. "Kody, I can explain." But the explanation that followed lacked conviction. Every word was carefully chosen, every pause calculated. Kody had heard this type of response many times before, and now, with evidence that David had compiled in his mind, he recognized it for what it really was: an attempt to deflect, protect herself, and control the narrative. Things escalated quickly. Kody, on a volatile mix of heartbreak and anger, pressed further. "Robyn, I trusted you. I trusted you completely. How could you hide something like this from me? How could you betray not just me, but this family?" His voice rose with each word, carrying the pain of years of trust being shattered in an instant. Robyn was taken aback, her voice trembling in defensiveness. "Kody, it's not what you think. You don't understand." But Kody did understand. He had seen the patterns, analyzed the evidence, and felt the subtle betrayals that had woven themselves into their daily lives. This wasn't some misunderstanding or momentary lapse in judgment. This was a series of actions designed and intentionally set in place to cover up the truth. As the confrontation escalated, the rest of the family started to feel the tension. What was once a home filled with laughter, warmth, and routine now felt like it was charged with uneasiness. Children, older siblings, and extended family members all started noticing the now blatant coldness in Kody's tone, the sharpness in Robyn's responses, and that electric atmosphere where even ordinary conversations sounded like they walked across a minefield. Arguments blew in. Things that had not been said for months, perhaps years, tumbled out. There were accusations, surges of emotion, and the crumbling of fragile calm that had managed to hold the family together. Kody, trying to remain composed, struggled to balance his anger with the desire to understand fully the scope of Robyn's actions. Robyn was equally emotional, going from defensiveness, tears, and periodic eruptions of frustration. "Why Robyn? Why him? Why betray everything we built?" Kody asked, his voice a mix of sorrow and rage. Robyn merely hesitated, turning away, as any explanation that would have justified the betrayal refused to come. Every explanation felt shallow, inadequate, and unable to mend the damage already done. Meanwhile, David's role as the whistleblower grew increasingly complicated. Some family members thanked him in private, realizing that if it hadn't been for him, the truth might have never come out. Others wondered what his motive was, and if he had a personal stake in bringing forth the affair. David, however, remained resolute. He had done what he felt he had to. Duty to Kody, duty to the family, and duty to the truth. In disrupting the family dynamic, he was also forcing on it an acknowledgement of fact that couldn't anymore be suppressed. Tensions at home came to a head. Casual conversations now held suspicion and doubt. Every interaction with Kody and Robyn was analyzed, every glance and word scrutinized for meaning. The children, in their innocence of understanding the situation, could feel that something was altered permanently. Robyn, realizing the gravity of the situation, attempted to regain control of the narrative. She attempted to justify her actions by citing emotional confusion, personal struggles, or miscommunication. But Kody, who already had evidence from David and his own observations, found no comfort in her words. The logical sequence of events, with undeniable proof, had removed the possibility of denial. At one point, the confrontation went to nearly a boiling point. Kody's voice rose, shaking with the intensity of his emotions. "I can't believe you would do this. All the love, all the trust, it meant nothing." Robyn, tearful of eye, could only respond in fragmented sentences, unable to articulate a defense that would satisfy the questions burning in Kody's mind. Unfolding in the midst of chaos, the family's extensive network became involved. Relatives, friends, even casual acquaintances were pulled into the storm by advice, taking sides, and speculating on what was to happen next. In a family as public as the sister wives, privacy had always been a fragile concept, but never like this. The emotional fallout was immediate. Sleep elusive, meals eaten in silence, and the once predictable household rhythm replaced by uncertainty and tension. The relationship between Kody and Robyn, which had been a source of stability, now teetered on the edge of collapse. Every shared space felt charged, every conversation a potential spark for further conflict. Yet, amidst the chaos, Kody also acknowledged the need for this fight. Secrets just sit inside of one, festering and growing in size. Only with an acknowledgement of reality does a person truly begin the road of understanding and accountability, and sometimes even healing. It wasn't a confrontation just about betrayal. It was about taking control over something that was spiraling out of his circle of influence. The confrontation brought to the fore deeper dynamics in the family as well. Other family members, observing the raw emotional exchange, started looking into their own roles, loyalties, and relationships. Inasmuch as the affair had its center in Robyn and Kody, it had caused a ripple effect, compelling the entire household to face unspoken truths, hidden resentments, and deeply embedded assumptions. For Kody, the challenge now was twofold: managing his own emotions while navigating the delicate web of family relationships. Trust had been shattered, and piecing it together would take time, honesty, and transparency among all participants. The confrontation had exposed the depth of the betrayal, but also opened some way to clarity, if not reconciliation. Faced with irrefutable proof and Kody's cold stare, Robyn had no choice but to own up to the truth. Her tears, apologies, and explanations could not undo what was done, but it was the start of a reckoning well overdue. In fact, the chaos and emotional turmoil of the confrontation forced both parties into realities that had been ignored for so long. By the end of the day, this was a household drained and emotionally depleted, forever changed. The confrontation had been cathartic in certain ways, though it opened up wounds that would take time to heal. Yet again, the chaos, though destructive, was necessary. It ripped through illusions, demanded honesty, and forced a set of circumstances upon the family that it would either rebuild from or fracture further under the tectonic weight of betrayal. As the sun went down and the silence creeped in, Kody sat quietly, reflecting on the events of the day. The confrontation was brutal, sad, and unavoidable. Robyn's secret, hidden affair was now out of the bag. And while the chaos this had unleashed seemed overwhelming at times, it had also illuminated the truth and was forcing them to face realities that they could no longer ignore. In that moment, Kody realized life would never be the same. Trust, once broken, is hard to get back. Once family dynamics were disrupted, realigning them was tough. But in the midst of the chaos, an opportunity also presented itself. To face the lies, to understand, and to rebuild on stronger foundations, if only they would make it through the storm together. The confrontation had been a turning point, a painful, chaotic, emotionally charged chapter in the continuing saga of sister wives. And as the family began to face the days ahead, they knew that the path forward would be shaped not just by anger or betrayal, but by the courage to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The fallout from that confrontation wasn't going to stay between Kody and Robyn. Once the cat was out of the bag, it would ripple throughout the family. Sister Wives isn't two people. It's a web of relationships, loyalties, and shared responsibilities. Robyn's secret affair with the cousin of David Woolley had not only shattered Kody's trust, but had caused shockwaves within the household. Every family member could feel the friction. Every conversation was fraught, and every glance held unspoken queries. The children, innocent yet perceptive, noticed the shift immediately. Mealtimes that were once filled with laughter and chatter now became silent, awkward gatherings. The youngest children asked questions they didn't fully understand, sensing the strain between their parents. Older children, aware of more than they let on, exchanged worried glances and whispered to each other in the hallways. Kody's role as a father, always centered on stability, was now challenged by the reality of betrayal and emotional upheaval. Protecting them from heartbreak while navigating his own feelings became an almost impossible balancing act. The extended family and close friends were also affected. Relationships within a polygamous family overlap in ways that make privacy practically impossible. Word leaked like sand, as relatives and friends sensed the tension, the arguing, and the late-night private discussions. Some reached out in support. Others were shocked or judgmental. A few wondered how much Robyn had actually done. The family felt as though it had come under an invisible microscope, with every interaction scrutinized and pulled apart. Social media magnified the aftershocks. Viewers of Sister Wives, who had already bought into the family's lives, knew about the controversy in record time. The platforms were filled with posts, speculation, and hot debates. Did Robyn really do this? How will Kody handle it? Is the family going to split? These questions dominated the online forums and comment sections, piling on pressure that the family could feel even without engaging directly. The scrutiny was relentless, and the family realized that the affair wasn't just a private matter. It was now public. Kody knew well the implications, and thus felt responsible for managing both the emotional well-being of the family and the public perception. His image as the patriarch, the man keeping the household together, was at stake. How he responded would influence not only internal family dynamics, but also how the outside world would perceive them. Every decision now carried a weight, and the pressure to act wisely yet decisively was immense. Robyn, however, had her own issues to battle. Her reputation, once forged in the fires of trust and loyalty, as well as public perception, was now in jeopardy. Friends, relatives, and fans began questioning her motives, her decisions, her character. She found herself treading a minefield of judgment, guilt, fear, and uncertainty within. Every apology she made seemed insufficient, every explanation treated as suspect. The emotional toll was huge, and she rapidly learned that restoring relationships would require so much more than words. David Woolley's cousin, caught in the center of the storm, became an unwilling focal point. Their involvement, previously hidden, attracted attention and speculation. Friends and acquaintances whispered, some condemning, others offering sympathy. But the truth was that their actions had consequences far beyond what they had imagined. In a family as interconnected as the Sister Wives, one secret could destabilize multiple lives, and now the cousin found themselves navigating the aftermath of a revelation that changed everything. The relationships within the house took a dramatic turn. Other wives watched this tension between them and wondered how it could change their interactions with Kody and Robyn. The trust that had once gone unspoken within their polygamous relationship was now being questioned. Some of the questions were: would Kody still be able to trust Robyn? Would this betrayal make him change the way he approached the other wives? And what about the future of the entire family? All this created an undercurrent of anxiety, added to an already tumultuous situation. Communications became strained. Every conversation was laced with suspicion. Every shared space was filled with tension. And any mundane exchange could potentially trigger an outbreak of conflict. Kody, in his effort to keep his cool, knew rebuilding the trust would not be easy. It would take time, openness, and tact in handling both emotions and family dynamics. The vulnerabilities that had long been ignored had been ripped open by the betrayal, and those vulnerabilities now needed addressing. In the meantime, social perception and public scrutiny added extra pressure. The fans of Sister Wives were a passionate and communicative community, and the drama soon became a hot topic. Rumors abounded. Some took Kody's side, others took Robyn's, and still, others discussed morality, loyalty, and consequences of such an affair. Every action taken by Kody or Robyn could now be interpreted, criticized, or praised, and so even the private decisions of the family felt like public ones. The family realized that they were navigating not just a personal crisis, but also a social one. The emotional security of the children then became a core issue with Kody. He knew that only secrecy, tension, and unresolved conflict might potentially scar their development and feelings of security. There needed to be carefully handled conversations with them, delicately answered questions, and reassurance given all the time. It was a tough balancing act, shielding them from the full emotional impact, yet still keeping honesty and integrity within the family. Robyn struggled with guilt and shame as she slowly confronted reality. It wasn't about saying sorry. It was proving accountability, restoring trust, working a fine balance between personal atonement and healing for the whole family. And then it was clear. Rebuilding into her relationships would take consistent effort, transparency, and an acknowledgement of the pain caused, not just to Kody, but to the entire household. The predictability of the household's routine was breached. Meals were quiet, as conversations were guarded. Tension was always present. Kody's role as patriarch was usurped, not by confrontation, but rather through the emotional and psychological fallouts from betrayal. Trust had been fractured, and every interaction was a testament to what had been lost. Through the chaos, the family members began to embrace the necessity of dialogue. They held meetings in which there was shouting and tears. Each member aired their feelings, fears, and frustrations. Such discussions, though painful, were fundamental to finding the extent of the problem and addressing emotional injuries, as well as setting the stage for healing. The fallout forced the family to confront not just the betrayal, but deeper, perhaps underlying issues that may have contributed to it. For Kody, he struggled to balance personal and public pressures. His heartbreak, authority within the family, and fan scrutiny, in addition to media and extended relatives. Every decision led to consequences, and the stakes were now higher than ever. This wasn't a personal betrayal, but a crisis that would affect the complete structure, dynamics, and public image of the entire family. The extended family, that was once such a great source of support, became now a source of tension. Some railing on Kody for the fact that he didn't catch it sooner. Others criticized Robyn. An emotional divide threatened to create rifts extending farther than within the immediate household and may impact relationships for years to come. Such pressure from the outside, along with the need to manage internal conflict, requires stamina, endurance, and tact. David continued to be a key player throughout the fallout. His actions had been the catalyst, the on-screen affair that set events tumbling toward open conflict, emotional confrontation, and public exposure. Though his motives were in question, the importance of the truth coming to light was unquestionable to many. His place within this situation emphasized how complicated it might get when discussing loyalty, morality, and intervention within a family context, and how tough it is to navigate conflicts where truth, secrecy, and personal relationships meet. As days turned into weeks, a new normal was being set, but one filled with heightened tension, emotional complexity, and ongoing challenges. Trust had to be rebuilt continuously, as it was no longer implicit. The children also adapted in their own way, influenced by the changing dynamics of their parents' interactions. Members of the extended family were still cautious. They only occasionally observed or advised. Social media continued to scrutinize every move. Yet, amidst the tension and chaos, there was the acknowledgement that healing was possible, though hard. Conversations were a little more constructive, the emotions somewhat contained. And the ways forward amidst this crisis were slowly mapped out by the family. Fragile, perhaps, but progress nonetheless. The fallout, painful as it would be, had brought honesty, confrontation, and acknowledgement along the way of truths that could no longer be ignored. Kody reflected that amidst all the chaos, the fallout had brought clarity as well. The betrayal, though it had fractured the trust, shone a light on the weaknesses, exposed hidden emotions, and made the family confront the realities of issues they had long ignored. This painful awareness could be the foundation for eventual rebuilding. Robyn knew she couldn't just apologize anymore. She knew she had to get to work, rebuilding trust and taking responsibility, learning to maneuver the family through this new landscape of hypersensitivity regarding secrets and loyalty. Every gesture, every word, every interaction held the weight of past actions, and the onus for repair was hers to bear. During the last stages of fallout, this family had been exhausted and emotionally drained, but was starting to see through the way forward. They had confronted the betrayal, rode through the chaos, and were starting to address the various fissures in their relationships. The process was by no means complete, but acknowledgement was the first step towards resolution. The family soon realized that while the fallout was a nightmare, it did indeed create an opportunity for honesty, transparency, and eventual healing. The journey would be long, with deep scars no doubt, but the revelation of the truth had at least laid the foundation to confront what had been well hidden for far too long. Days after the confrontation and fallout were heavy, filled with silence, reflection, and quiet tension. Kody had spent sleepless nights replaying the events in his mind, trying to process the betrayal, understand the motives, and determine the next steps. Every decision he now made carried with it a tremendous weight, not just for himself alone, but for the entire family. He had to take into account his own emotional well-being, the trust of the other wives, and most importantly, the impact on the children. Robyn, on the other hand, was on an emotional roller coaster, racked by feelings of guilt, fear, and shame. She knew there was much more at stake than feeling sorry. The need to act responsibly, restore trust, and accept the repercussions of her actions, not only within the family, but also before the public, was great. Every time she got together with Kody, the other wives, and the children, a sense of betrayal filtered through. Simple gestures, a smile, a touch, and a conversation carried the weight of months of secrecy. The household gradually began to develop a new rhythm and routine, even though the tension in the air still lingered. Words were more deliberate, eyes cautious, and exchanges full of unasked questions. Where trust once flowed seemingly without any contemplation, now it needed repetitively obvious proof in a good amount, with consistency. Kody realized that patience would be required. Rebuilding a fractured family does not happen overnight, and emotional wounds take time to heal. Each small step, an open-hearted conversation, an action of transparency, or one spent together doing a family activity, was a building block in the foundation towards possible reconciliation. Extended family and friends were watching, some supportive, many judging, and others with speculation. Social media buzzed with updates, theories, and critiques. The family would be further reminded that fallout was no longer private. Any action they took had the potential to be scrutinized, misinterpreted, or sensationalized. This setting necessitated Kody to work through both the emotional and public aspects of the situation. He knew how important appearance would be, not from vanity, but in maintaining family stability during an especially turbulent time. Despite the challenges, Kody began to see glimmers of hope. The confrontation had forced truth into the open, and although painful, it also provided clarity. Once secrets are revealed, they can no longer fester. The damage by Robyn was now out in the open, and the family could begin the slow process of rebuilding, if they chose to face it together. One of the first orders of business was to repair relationships within the household. He spoke with each wife individually about her feelings, concerns, and expectations. He talked about transparency and open communication, mutual support. For some, that meant revisiting some pretty uncomfortable truths. For others, it meant learning how to trust again. Kody realized that while fixing the broken trust with Robyn was important, so too was ensuring that the other wives felt secure, heard, and valued. The well-being of the children stayed on his mind. He searched for every avenue to continue providing them with stability, reassurance, and safety, and normalcy, while the tensions stayed high. Family activities, structured routines, and calm and honest conversations were among the many tools that became vital for dealing with the household. Kody knew that completely hiding the children from the emotional turmoil was impossible. However, he was able to give them guidance and love, and further a feeling of safety that helped them through the chaos. Meanwhile, Robyn took proactive steps to demonstrate accountability. She reflected deeply, openly acknowledged her mistakes, and sought to rebuild trust with consistent actions. The apologies were crucial, but added to the gestures of transparency, sharing her schedule, being truthful about interactions, and actively participating in family discussions. She knew her words would never fix years of trust. It would be her actions that decided whether the family truly could move on. Public perception was constant. Viewers and fans of Sister Wives continued to watch every step, analyze interactions, and speculate about the future of the family. Kody and Robyn were well aware that social media would make any success or missteps louder and add extra pressure. They had to balance private healing with public scrutiny and dignity as they combed through some very human realities: betrayal, forgiveness, and family dynamics. And of course, the road ahead was anything but smooth. Kody knew the emotional scarring would be long in healing, trust would be rebuilt gradually, and family dynamics would require constant attention. Every day brought with it an opportunity to get better or slip backwards, and the decisions made on a daily basis were magnified, thanks to the public eye. He knew that with patience, consistency, and clear communication, he would navigate the months and likely years of healing ahead. Yet even in the face of uncertainty, there were moments of hope, small gestures, a shared meal, a conversation sans argument, a moment of genuine laughter, places reminders that relationships could be rebuilt. Rebuilding was not just to reestablish what had been lost in terms of trust, but to redefine connections, deepen understanding, and reaffirm the bonds which had been tested but never wholly snapped. But Kody realized through this crisis that there also came the possibility for personal growth. Few things in life are harsher teachers than betrayal, which forces one into pain, reassessment of priorities, and resilience. Reflecting, gaining self-awareness, and intentional actions could result in his emerging from this turmoil, not as a survivor of betrayal, but one stronger and more thoughtful as a leader to his family. It was not insignificant, however, that Robyn's accountability, continuing to be transparent and working tirelessly to regain trust, could either make or break reconciliation. The path would be long. It would require patience, humility, and consistent effort. But the foundation had been laid through honesty and confrontation. The family also started thinking about long-term ways to avoid similar situations that might bring on crises in the future. Open communication, shared decision-making, and regular check-ins became mandatory practices. Lessons learned from this betrayal called for vigilance, honesty, and emotional connection as binding forces that held the family together. Each family member knew rebuilding trust required individual and group commitment. As weeks turned into months, the family slowly learned to live with the new normal. Though the memory of the betrayal still lingered, things were getting better. Relationships that had been stormy took a foothold, and conversations became more open. Slowly, emotional stability began to return. Kody, Robyn, and the rest of the household came to learn that healing is not linear, but instead filled with setbacks, tiny victories, and persistent work. The journey forward was not clearly defined. There were too many questions regarding the affair's long-term effect, whether trust could be maintained, and how the family would look in the public eye. But there was an unspoken agreement that confrontation, honesty, and steady labor could forge a way to healing. The road would be difficult, but it was negotiable, with patience, resilience, and determination. To the followers of Sister Wives, the story was no longer about a scandal, but a tale of human complexity, family loyalty, and the tough balance love, trust, and forgiveness require. Kody's journey, riddled with heartbreak, resilience, and leadership, put into light the emotional intricacies that come with sustaining a family under extraordinary circumstances. Robyn's struggle has brought to light the results of decisions, accountability, and how hard it truly is to repair relationships after a betrayal. As the family moved ahead, they knew that the past could not be revisited, but their future could be theirs to choose. Each decision made, each word spoken, every deed done would determine their next life chapter. Trust, once lost, would be rebuilt over time and through effort. Love, tested, would deepen with insight. And family, fractured, could mend, provided all members were ready to face the truth and grow. Kody reflected on the lessons learned. It was going to be a tough road ahead, very emotional and unpredictable, but he was determined to make it through with courage and clarity. The confrontation had uncovered painful truths, yet it shed light on a path to healing, one that did indeed require honesty, empathy, and commitment to family. So did Robyn. She knew healing wasn't about words, but about consistent, willful action, a day at a time, accounting for one's actions, regaining trust, and being responsible toward the emotional security of the family. It was a long journey, but the willingness to take it seriously was the first step toward redemption and reconciliation. It was a story of betrayal, confrontation, and fallout, but the genuine journey lay within. It was about navigating through a storm of emotions, restoring trust, and rebuilding relationships that were tested beyond their limits. Kody and Robyn, with the rest of the family, faced an uncertain future, full of possibility, one where truthfulness, accountability, and effort would turn pain into growth, chaos into clarity, and fractured bonds into more resilient connections. The path going forward was not an easy one. It would stop at nothing, demanding patience, resilience, and devotion at each and every turn. Yet the family knew one thing for sure. The revelation of secrets, as damaging as it had been, had granted them an opportunity to confront reality, face the consequences, and choose a path toward healing. And while they now started walking that uncertain future, one thing was clear. The story of Kody, Robyn, and the entire family was not over, but just really beginning. The journey of trust, betrayal, and redemption had only begun, and the choices they made right now would define not just the present, but the legacy of their family for generations yet to come.